This is part 16 now of the series we've been doing through Matthew 24, the Olivet Discourse, which is entitled The Last Days of the Old Covenant. And Jesus says that Jerusalem, the temple, all of that was going to be torn down. Disciples want to know when that was going to happen. And he's telling them all the things that are going to lead up to it, that there'd be persecution, there'd be lots of false teachers, and also that all this stuff's going to happen, going to lead up to it, the destruction. Oh, and it's going to happen in their generation, he tells them. And so now we're up to verse 26 in Matthew 24. And let me read that. I'm going to read verse 26 through 28. That's what we're going to cover today. Therefore, if they say to you, behold, he is in the wilderness, do not go out. Or behold, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe them. For just as the lightning comes from the east and appears even to the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. So basically what he's saying here is don't be led astray. His coming will be in judgment by the Roman army. And we know this from what we've been going through and also the parallel passages when we looked at Luke 21. Let me just remind you a couple of the verses in Luke 21, which is also the Olivet Discourse. 21:20 of Luke. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is at hand. Verse 22. Because these are days of vengeance, so that all things which are written will be fulfilled. Verse 24. And they will fall by the edge of the sword and will be led captive into all the nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So we got an army coming. Judgment is coming by an army. And this is all the same things that Jesus is talking about. And so let's look closer at these verses. So verse 26 of Matthew 24 says, therefore, if they say to you, behold, he is in the wilderness, do not go out. Or behold, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe them. So what does wilderness combined with inner room remind you of? Well, Jesus used to go out to these desolate places, these wilderness places, to pray. And he also commanded to pray in an inner room. Remember that? He told his disciples, pray in an inner room. Which means these are two places that Jesus could be found praying. So what is Jesus trying to say? Well, Jesus first came in humble dependence on God the Father. That's why he was always praying. But when he came back in 70 AD, he did not come back as a man, as a dependent man. Jesus was saying he will not be found in the wilderness praying to God or in his inner room praying to God. He is coming as God, as the Ancient of Days. That's what he means by that verse 26. And verse 27 of Matthew 24 says, for just as the lightning comes from the east and appears even to the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. So many people these days seem to think that Christ hasn't come back. He couldn't have come back yet because there's supposed to be this huge light show in the sky, right? All this lightning, all this stuff going on. Now, there are also some that don't take it literally, but they give meaning to it by their own understanding. So they'll say things like that lightning means he'll come back quickly, which is true. He did say that. But we can't just insert our own definitions into Scripture. As I've said 100 times before, and I've even demonstrated over and over again, we must interpret Scripture with Scripture. Meaning, how is lightning used in Scripture? Well, let's take a look, shall we? And then we'll know what Jesus is referring to. So first, lightning pictures God's presence. And this is back in Exodus 19:16. It says, so it happened on the third day when it was morning that there were thunder and lightning flashes and a thick cloud upon the mountain and a very loud trumpet sound, so that all the people who were in the camp trembled. So this is when Yahweh descended on Mount Sinai and all the people were scared seeing the lightning. So lightning is picturing the presence of God. And more specifically, lightning pictures his presence in judgment. So in Deuteronomy 32, that chapter talks about Yahweh judging Israel in the last days of the Old Covenant. But let's look at Deuteronomy 32, verse 41, says, "If I sharpen my flashing sword, and my hand takes hold on judgment, I will render vengeance on my adversaries, and I will repay those who hate me." He's referring to the covenant breakers there. And that flashing sword, that's the same word flashing is for lightning here. In Psalm 18, lightning is used metaphorically and pictures judgment on David's enemies who were killed by an army. I'm going to read just a couple of verses in Psalm 18. So first, Psalm 18:1, to get the context, it says, "For the choir director of the servant of Yahweh of David, who spoke to Yahweh the words of this song in the day that Yahweh delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul." So we can read those accounts and know that it was the Philistines that actually killed Saul and killed his enemies. But this is how it's described in Psalm 18. I'm going to read verse 9 through 14. Talking about Yahweh. He bowed the heavens and came down with thick darkness under his feet. He rode upon a cherub and flew. He sped upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his hiding place, his canopy around him, darkness of waters, thick clouds of the skies. From the brightness before him passed his thick clouds, hailstones and coals of fire. Yahweh also thundered in the heavens, and the Most High gave forth his voice, hailstones and coals of fire. He sent out his arrows and scattered them, and lightning flashes in abundance, and threw them into confusion. So you get a picture of Yahweh riding on the clouds, throwing all this lightning at David's enemies. But we know it was the Philistines that did it. This is just the metaphoric language that the Bible uses. Ezekiel 1:13 and 14. "As for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, like the appearance of torches going back and forth among the living creatures. The fire was bright, and lightning was flashing from the fire, and the living creatures ran to and fro with the appearance of lightning." So if you read Ezekiel 1 or the book of Ezekiel, these living creatures flashing lightning, they actually picture nations who would bring judgment to Israel. That's what it pictures. And in Ezekiel 21 specifically, the word lightning is used to describe the light reflecting off of swords. So I'm going to read a few verses in Ezekiel 21, verse 3. "And say to the land of Israel, thus says Yahweh, behold, I am against you, and I will bring out my sword from its sheath, and cut off from you the righteous and the wicked." Verse 10, the sword is sharpened to make a slaughter, polished to flash like lightning. There it is again. "Or shall we rejoice in the scepter of my son? The sword despises every tree." Verse 15 of Ezekiel 21, "That the hearts may melt, and many will be stumbling blocks at all their gates. I have given the glittering sword. It is made for striking like lightning. It is wrapped up in readiness for slaughter." And then verse 28, "Now as for you, son of man, prophesy and say, thus says Lord Yahweh concerning the sons of Ammon, and concerning their reproach, and say, a sword is drawn, polished for the slaughter, to cause it to consume, that it may be like lightning." So the flashing sword was against Israel and Ammon. We also see lightning used to describe the speed of an army when they fought Nineveh in the book of Nahum. So Nahum 2:4. "The chariots race madly in the streets. They rush wildly in the squares. Their appearance is like torches. They dash to and fro like lightning flashes." So all these references I'm giving you refer to judgment by an army. And then in the New Testament, we have a parallel passage to Matthew 24. In Luke 17, verse 24 says, "For just like the lightning when it flashes out of one part of the sky shines to the other part of the sky, so will the Son of Man be in his day. And so the Greek word used here for flashing, talking about the lightning flashing, it's only used once in the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. And it's in Psalm 144. So I wonder if this psalm also has to do with war. So I'm going to read the first 6 verses of Psalm 144, and we'll see if it has to do with war. Psalm 144, verse 1. Of David, blessed be Yahweh my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for battle. So it is about war. There you go. Verse 2. My loving kindness and my fortress, my stronghold and my deliverer, my shield and he in whom I take refuge, who subdues my people under me. O Yahweh, what is man that you know him, or the son of man that you think of him? Man is like a breath. His days are like a passing shadow. O Yahweh, bow your heavens and come down. Touch the mountains that they may smoke. Flash forth lightning and scatter them. Send out your arrows and confuse them. He's using the similar language that he used in Psalm 18. And this is talking about war, battle. All right, let's look at just a few more verses in Revelation so we can fully understand what lightning refers to in Scripture. Revelation 4, verses 5. And out from the throne came flashes of lightning and sounds and peals of thunder. And there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. So we see the presence of God there. Revelation 8:5. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with the fire of the altar and threw it to the earth. And there followed peals of thunder and sounds and flashes of lightning and an earthquake. Revelation 11:19. And the sanctuary God which is in heaven was open, and the ark of his covenant appeared in his sanctuary, and there were flashes of lightning and sounds and peals of thunder and an earthquake and a great hailstorm. And then finally, Revelation 16:18. And there were flashes of lightning and sounds and peals of thunder, and there was a great earthquake, such as there had not been since man came to be upon the earth. So great an earthquake was it, and so mighty. So in all these passages in Revelation, lightning pictures the Lord's presence in judgment. And as we saw throughout the Old Testament, this is judgment through an army. So since Jesus is Yahweh and all judgment has been given to him, he himself is pictured as lightning, since he is the very presence of God in judgment by means of his army, which happened to be the Roman army in their generation. Jesus also says in Matthew 24 that this lightning comes from the east. So we'll look at a few verses to better understand that. Isaiah 27:12. And it will be in that day that Yahweh will start his threshing from the flowing stream of the river. That's the river Euphrates, which is to the east border of Israel. From the river to the brook of Egypt, which is the west side. And you will be gathered up one by one, O sons of Israel. So he's talking about judgment starting from the east side of Israel all the way to the west side. And we see this same language of Isaiah 27 in Revelation 9 and Revelation 16. Let me read that. Revelation 9, 14 through 16. One saying to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, release the 4 angels who have been bound at the great river Euphrates. That's the same river he's talking about in Isaiah 27. And the 4 angels were released who had been prepared for the hour and day and month and year, so that they would kill 1/3 of mankind. And the number of the armies of the horsemen was 200 million. I heard the number of them. So even though there's a lot of symbolic language in Revelation, it's an army he's showing that's coming from the Euphrates, from the east, just like Isaiah 27 predicted. Also, Revelation 16:12 says the same thing. And the 6th angel poured out his bowl on the great river, the Euphrates, and its water was dried up, so that the way would be prepared for the kings from the east. So you got the kings coming from east to west, across all of Israel, bringing judgment. just like Isaiah 27 predicted. So Jesus comes in judgment from the east, and then after the darkness subsides, the sun rises from the east, and a new covenant day dawns. Luke 1:78 through 79, this is Zechariah prophesying. Because of the tender mercy of our God, with which the sunrise from on high will visit us, to shine upon those who sit in darkness and the shadow of death, to direct our feet into the way of peace. So this sunrise from on high comes. The sunrise is from the east. It's actually the same Greek word, sunrise and in east, in a lot of cases. So let me go back to Isaiah 59. I'm going to read verse 18 through 21. And this is, Jesus gets all armored up and he's bringing judgment to Old Covenant Israel, the covenant breakers. Verse 18, according to what they deserve, so he will pay in full wrath to his adversaries, what is deserved to his enemies. To the coastlands he will repay what they deserve. So they will fear the name of Yahweh from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. For he will come like a rushing stream, which the wind of Yahweh makes flee. So here he is coming again from the east, like a rising sun and like a rushing stream, coming in, bringing that judgment and also bringing salvation. Verse 20, a redeemer will come to Zion, and to those who turn from transgression in Jacob, declares Yahweh. As for me, this is my covenant with them, says Yahweh. My spirit which is upon you, and my words which I have put in your mouth shall not depart from your mouth, nor from the mouth of your seed, nor from the mouth of your seed's seed, says Yahweh, from now and forever. So he's talking about the new covenant coming in after the judgment. And it all comes from the east, from the sunrise. Jesus also says in Matthew that he's coming as the Son of Man, but we'll talk more about the Son of Man when we get to verse 30. Verse 30 quotes Daniel 7 where it talks about the Son of Man. So we'll get to that next week or the week after. Matthew 24:28 now, last verse of our section, says, wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. So I just want to look at one verse regarding corpse, and that is Psalm 110, verse 6. In Psalm 110, that's the most famous psalm in the Bible because it's quoted the most out of any psalm. So I'm going to read verse 1 of Psalm 110 and then verse 6. So verse 1, of David, a psalm. Yahweh says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies as a footstool for your feet. That's the most quoted verse. And then verse 6, he will render justice among the nations. He will fill them with corpses. He will crush the head that is over the wide earth. So he crushes the head of the serpent. And Old Covenant Israel was pictured, they were a synagogue of Satan. They were pictured as the serpent of that time, and they were crushed. He put his enemies under his feet. All right, and then in Matthew 24, so where the corpse is, there the vultures will gather, it says. The word for vulture here in Matthew 24:28 is the same word for eagle. So let's look at some uses of this word to see what it represents in Scripture. First is Deuteronomy 28:49. Says, Yahweh will bring a nation against you from afar, from the end of the earth, as the eagle swoops down, a nation whose tongue you shall not understand. So that was one of the curses for breaking the old covenant, that an army would come like an eagle and bring them judgment. Jeremiah 4:13. Behold, he goes up like clouds, and his chariots like the whirlwind. His horses are swifter than eagles. Woe to us, for we are devastated. Jeremiah 4 is also about judgment of Israel and an army coming like eagles. Lamentations 4:19. Our pursuers were swifter than the eagles of the sky. They hotly pursued us on the mountains. They waited in ambush for us in the wilderness. Again, judgment on Israel. Hosea 8:1. Put the trumpet to your mouth. Like an eagle, the enemy comes against the house of Yahweh. Why did they come against the house of Yahweh? Because they have trespassed against my covenant and transgressed against my law. That's why he's bringing these armies, these enemies against them like eagles to destroy them, because they transgressed his law and broke the covenant. Habakkuk 1, 5 through 8. See among the nations and look, be also astonished, be astounded, because I am doing something in your days. You would not believe it if it was recounted to you. For behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation who walk on the breadth of the land, to possess dwelling places which are not theirs. They are dreaded and feared. Their justice and exaltation come forth from themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards, and sharper than wolves in the evening. Their horsemen come galloping. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle swooping down to devour. Again, we got eagle language coming in an army of judgment against Israel. At that time, it was the Chaldeans, the Babylonians. And we see a parallel passage in Luke 17 again. I'm going to read Luke 17, 34 and then 37. Verse 34. I tell you, on that night there will be two in one bed, one will be taken and the other will be left. Verse 37. And answering, they said to him, Where, Lord? They're asking where they're going to be taken. And he said to them, Where the body is, there also the vultures will be gathered. And notice they're taken in judgment. People use these passages for rapture, like taken up to heaven, but the people taken are actually judged. These ones are not raptured, they're fed to the Roman army. I got here. Revelation 4:7. And the first creature was like a lion, and the second creature like a calf, and the third creature had a face like that of a man, and the fourth creature was like a flying eagle. So these creatures picture nations bringing judgment, as we saw in Ezekiel. Revelation is just drawing on these passages. The fourth creature is an eagle, which just happens to be Rome's mascot. Their mascot was the eagles. They were represented by eagles. Everybody, you can read history books. That was their mascot. Revelation 8:13. Then I looked, and I heard an eagle flying in mid-heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, because of the remaining blasts of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound. So these woes come from God's messengers. Angels just means messenger. And the messengers here are the Roman army. They're the ones coming, bringing that judgment. And we also see a graphic picture of these birds in Revelation 19:21. Again, this is the judgment of Jerusalem, of Babylon the harlot, which is Jerusalem. It says, And the rest were killed with the sword which comes from the mouth of him who sits on the horse. This is Christ coming in judgment through the Roman army to Jerusalem. And then it says, And all the birds were filled with their flesh. So just to sum all this up, what Jesus is saying in Matthew 24, I'm not returning to Jerusalem in your generation as a man. I'm coming as the full presence of God, as the judge, by means of an army with flashing swords, specifically the Roman army, who are swifter than eagles, and will carry you away and feed on your flesh. But I will save my elect and usher in the new covenant.